Welcome back to the Entertainment Room, where today I am discussing this high-octane, action-packed, occasionally horny action film, Crank, directed by Brian Taylor and Mark Neveldine, starring Jason Statham. My first memory of this film was a night back in 2006 after my mom and I picked out this film at either Movie Gallery or Blockbuster. My mom would let me watch some R-rated films if they weren't too bad or too over the top, and with this one we were kind of thinking along the lines of more transporter style Jason Statham, so we popped it into the DVD player with my stepdad and stepbrother at the time, and after about 5 minutes, we were swiftly sent off to our rooms. We found out what warranted the R rating very fast, and after growing up and being able to go to Blockbuster on my own, I eventually did pick this one back up to try and watch it again. And it's ridiculous and vulgar in places, but even by that point, it was nowhere near the worst type of film I've seen. And I've actually seen Crank a few times now, not because of all that shit, but because it's actually a really fun action movie. Just not fun with the family. So Jason Statham has a lot of disposable action films. I've only reviewed a couple of his films on this podcast so far, and neither of them were great reviews, but that doesn't mean I don't like Jason Statham. I think he's a great action star sometimes. So, is this another disposable entry? Where does Crank stack up? Let's get into it. You can tell pretty early that this film is not trying to be completely serious. It's meant to be dumb in places and have humor. Dark humor, for sure. And it takes its absurdity and fucking runs with it. You just have to like projects like this that are so extravagant and exaggerated, and a bit dirty. If you enjoy the simple pleasures of a Statham action film, you like that most of them are pretty straightforward, this may or may not be for you, depending on how your sense of humor is. But the plot is that Statham's character is Chef Chilios, and he is kidnapped and injected with a poison after he assassinates a higher-up member of one of the city's gangs. The poison will kill him if his heart rate drops too low, and they expect that he won't even last an hour. Anatomy, science, logic, all that aside, because no one cares, this is a perfect premise for a mindless, action-packed time. And the song opener being the song Metal Health Bang Your Head by Quiet Riot, you know you're in for a ride. I will go ahead and get to some spoilers of some of my favorite and least favorite aspects of Crank. You heard the premise. Give it a go. Keep in mind there is a fair bit of sex and nudity, including a really odd sex scene, pervasive language, crude humor, some of the humor not so PC, enough to get a lot of people canceled, probably today if it were to come out like this again. But it is fast-paced action. If you like Jason Statham, there's a good chance you'll still like him here. So now, let's get on with it. So Chef Chilios is again injected with what is technically called a Beijing cocktail, but it is mostly just called that Chinese shit. And so to try to stay alive, Chilios needs to find a gang that injected him and try and demand the antidote, if there is one, while finding some interesting ways to keep the old heart rate up. In that aspect, it's really entertaining. He attempts this by stomping on the gas, getting into fights, stealing drugs, and also drinking Red Bulls right outside of the gas station fridge to ironically avoid getting wings. And the whole film is mostly just him fighting and or evading some enemy. And with the fight scenes, they're cool. Not really as big or impressive as other films by Statham, but I don't really think they needed to be, and I don't think they tried to be, but they are tense and enjoyable all the same. And I feel like the situational humor and the dialogue works well for the most part, again depending on your type of sense of humor. And Statham was actually worried about being the right person for this role because he didn't think he was funny, but they explained to him that he doesn't necessarily need to say funny things or tell good jokes. The situations themselves and the awkward dialogue was more of what they were leaning towards, and I think that worked out well for them. Some humor, though, really doesn't work and is just odd. And there are some, racial jokes. Not really jokes, just odd racial remarks. And I'm good with dark humor, edgy humor if it's done well. And I get we're dealing with racy and sketchy individuals, so realistically, these people would probably say a lot worse if they were real life. But here's just so awkwardly placed. I think there's only mainly two of these remarks. At the beginning, he visits a black gang that he was initially cool with at first, but by the end of their conversation, his heart rate's dropping and he decides he needs to do something crazy to get the heart rate up. So instead of just starting the fight like they wouldn't get the point of what he was doing, he just says, "I'm gonna kick some black ass," before attacking them. Like, bro, did you really need to specify who you're attacking and what you were doing? I think your sudden violence got the point across just fine. But the most fucked up one, though, is him stealing a cab and throwing the driver out onto a busy street. And even though this driver didn't even look like he was going to bother getting up and fighting back, Chef Chelios then points at him while he's on the ground and shouts, "Al Qaeda! Al Qaeda!" before stealing the car and driving on, and people just start pouncing on this guy. Like, Chelios, man, you did not need to call him out like that. You could have been in the car driving already. And hilariously, it's three elderly women with canes and walkers who are the ones to attack him. And I do get that here at least. It's potentially dark satire, playing on people's paranoia after 9/11, but the man was on the ground. He didn't need to pause just to do that. What the fuck did the driver do to him? But overall, Statham in general does work here. His character was funny with his different quirks. Amy Smart as Eve works okay mostly as an opposing force to Chelios, as she is too distracted by her own shit to really catch on to what is going on for a while. And that adds a bit to the comedy and the tension as well. But the sex scene between the two of them was just so bizarre. I know Chelios' heart rate was dropping again, he was on the ground, but they were in public, on dirty-ass concrete. Just start running again. But I guess if nothing else, people will remember this scene. And brief spoiler for the sequel, they for some reason do this shit again. But I guess I'll just leave that one there. I guess I don't really know what else I could say on that. If nothing else, take a bathroom break if you're for some reason watching this with your family, which you should not do. But the runtime also is fairly short, and that's a fine thing for a film like this. It stays upbeat and exciting the whole way through. I also liked how this film was shot. It trying to bring us into Chelios' psyche when he was tripping at different points as his heart rate fluctuated and goes through these different changes. The flashes of light, the slower motion. They had this like chirping or like old ringtone sound going off at different moments, which I thought was really clever. They also had like two different cameras, like A and B cameras, so they can rotate between these close-ups and these wide shots. And they did that pretty regularly, but for the type of movie this was and the story they were shooting, I think it really worked and was fitting. One final piece of trivia, Nicolas Cage almost took this role, and that would have been fucking glorious in its own way. Now, I don't need a reboot or a remake per se, but I think a sketch or a skit would have been epic. I think we're way past that in 2024, but I do almost wish we got an interpretation with Nicolas Cage. Hell, maybe I do need a remake, but probably won't happen. But overall, I do enjoy Crank. It's over the top in a fantastic way and rewatchable. Competent action. The story is cool. Of course, don't let logic get in the way. Just watch the action movie. The last couple of minutes are a bit much, maybe a bit too cartoony, even for the tone, where he survives his very high fall. But it's not something to ruin it, of course. I'll give Crank a 7.2 out of 10. I hope you enjoyed this review as well as Crank itself if you've seen it. Let me know what you'd like for me to review next, and have many more reviews on the way. So I hope you'll join me again next time on The Entertainment Room.